Welcome back. We are exactly now 1 month away from a potential government shutdown on December 20th. Speaker Mike Johnson pushing for a continuing resolution again, which would extend the deadline into early 2025 and Trump's second term. Republican Ohio Congressman Max Miller coming out against that plan. He's urging Congress to pass a full-year deal so Trump can quickly move his agenda forward and not be slowed down by a funding fight. House Freedom Caucus Chairman Andy Harris wants to attach the SAVE Act to the government funding bill. The SAVE Act would require voters to provide proof of citizenship when voting in federal elections. Joining me now is Wisconsin Congressman Bryan Steil. He's the chairman of the House Administration Committee and a member of the House Financial Services Committee. Congressman, good to see you. Thank you so much for being here. Would you support that, putting the SAVE Act attached to a budget, funding bill?
At the end of the day, this is going to be President Trump's call as to what we want to lead with as he comes into office on January 20th. All of us would like to see the SAVE Act passed. We're going to have an opportunity to get real election integrity legislation into law when President Trump comes to office on January 20th. If we want to be able to clear the deck for the president and get the spending bills done first, so we can focus in on the big things when he arrives, that's just great. If he would like us to do a short CR into the beginning of next year so that we can get through this gap period while we have Democrat control in the Senate and then hit the ground running next year, that works also. At the end of the day, it's a play call that the president is going to make because there's so much work where we need to get our country back on track. I'd love to see us get the spending bill done for the year, but at the end of the day, I think President Trump is going to make that play call, and we're going to be in a position to execute it.
I mean, we probably would not be in a position to watch swing states doing recounts right now. It is, after all, November 20th, and the election was November 5th, and yet in Pennsylvania, the Senate candidate Bob Casey refuses to concede, and they have openly admitted that they are counting illegal ballots from people who are non-citizens. So if you had the SAVE Act in place, we would not be in this place today.
Well, you need a lot of things in place to make sure we're not in this situation. You not only have the situation playing out at the Senate level in Pennsylvania, we have multiple House races in the state of California where they're still counting votes.
Right.
This is the problem where states in our country allow ballots to arrive after Election Day. Then you often have a debate about what happens if an individual didn't date their ballot appropriately, if there's not a barcode from the USPS on that ballot. The solution to this is what most states do, states like my home state of Wisconsin or the state of Florida, that simply says your ballot needs to be in by the time the polls are closed. That solves a lot of the problems that we're seeing playing out across the country. We need to do that. We need photo ID. We need to make sure only U.S. citizens are voting in U.S. elections.
Yep.
As we come into unified Republican government control, we have a big opportunity to move forward legislation as it relates to election integrity. As chair on the Committee on House Administration, we're working vigorously right now to make sure that we have that legislation in place so we can move it and have it signed into law by President Trump. I think it needs to be one of our absolute top priorities in the House.
All right. Well, we'll be watching you work on that. Meanwhile, President-elect Trump building out his administration, tapping Trump transition team co-chair and Cantor Fitzgerald CEO Howard Lutnick as Commerce Secretary. He'll be partly responsible for overseeing trade and tariffs. Trump also nominating former Wisconsin Congressman and Fox Business host Sean Duffy as Transportation Secretary. The president said Sean will use his experience and the relationships he's built over many years in Congress to maintain and rebuild our nation's infrastructure. Your thoughts on Trump's picks?
I know Howard Lutnick well. I know Sean Duffy well. Let me tell you out of the gates, Sean Duffy is a great pick for the Department of Transportation. The picks across the board here by President Trump are positive. He's moving quickly. He's looking to shake up Washington, D.C. at a period of time where we have to shake up Washington, D.C. so it starts working on behalf of the American people so we can get this country back on track. We're seeing time and again President Trump moving quickly, moving boldly, and ready to shake up Washington, D.C. That's what the voters voted for in November. That's what I'm ready to do. And I'm excited when we're going to be able to hit the ground running on January 20th when President Trump is signed into office.
Yeah, and we'll see how the Senate responds to all of these picks in early January when the 119th Congress begins. The hearings will begin early January. So we've got more to come on that. But, Congressman, you're deploying congressional election observers to Iowa's first district for the official recount. I want to get back to this for a second because Democrat Christina Bohanian asked for a recount last week. She trails Republican incumbent Marionette Miller Meeks by about 800 votes. The AP has still not called this race, which is incredible to me. How crucial is this race for Republicans' majority? Because little by little, you're going lower and lower in terms of the majority here, right? Now you've got a razor-thin margin again.
Yeah, we're seeing trend lines in the wrong direction in California. Michelle Steele is down by a bit. We need to get John Duarte back above the line. And again, we're frustrated with the delay in counting. In Iowa, they're beginning a recount with Marionette Miller Meeks. I've deployed 10 election observers to the state of Iowa from the United States House of Representatives to be our eyes and ears and observers on the ground. This is part of our robust election integrity project from the Committee on House Administration, our commitment to make that only legal votes are counting and that we're following the laws. What we saw 4 years ago with Marionette Miller Meeks' seat, where in that case she won by simply 6 votes. What we saw was Democrats trying to actually kick her out of office. And at the end of the day, through the Committee on House Administration, the work of others like Representative Rodney Davis, we were able to push back against the Democrats and make sure that Marionette Miller Meeks, the duly elected representative from Iowa, won that race. What we're prepared for is all sorts of actions by the Democrats that we saw 4 years ago, is why we're deploying 10 election observers to observe this recount. So we are in a position to defend this seat when Marionette Miller Meeks is ultimately identified as the winner by the state of Iowa.
All right, here's Todd Pyro.
What's your biggest concern, Congressman? What specifically will these observers be looking for in terms of irregularities or, dare I say, illegalities?
They're the eyes and ears on the ground to document what is occurring. I'm of the view that when the cat's away, the mice will play. We're putting in place the cats, the eyes and ears on the ground to make sure that everyone is following the rules. In the event that one of these observers who are professionally trained by our committee would observe anything nefarious, the first thing they do would be call me and the attorneys that we have on staff. We deployed election observers across the country, places like California, Pennsylvania, my home state of Wisconsin. And on Election Day, those men and women played a vital role, making sure that the rules were being followed in every location across the country. These 10 individuals will be on the ground, will be observing the election process, making sure that the rules are followed and making sure that we have documentation of exactly that occurring.
All right. Well, that's certainly something I know you'll be working on in terms of new rules and regulations around voting. But what would you say is your priority in the 119th Congress next year?
Boy, I think election integrity needs to be number one. We have unified Republican control. There's obvious things that we should have in place across the country, such as photo ID. This is an 80-20 issue across the country. You need a photo ID to go buy a six-pack of beer, to board an airplane, to open a bank account. Good grief. You should need a photo ID to vote in the United States of America. We can get ourselves to a spot where we can really enhance election integrity, increase Americans' confidence in our elections. And if we do that, that's to the benefit of the democracy, and in particular, to the benefit of all future elections in the United States of America.
Yeah, we've been covering a lot of the retail earnings this morning, and TJX is out with its numbers. They beat expectations on revenue of $14.1 billion and on earnings of $1.14 a share versus an estimate of $1.09. But everybody we speak with, Congress, says the same thing, that consumers are stretched, that the economy is not what it appears from the headlines. What would be the most important sort of trigger or spark to get this economy moving in a real substantial way?
So many people are being impacted by the inflation of the Biden-Harris administration still. We need to do 3 key things to bring inflation down, in my opinion. 1, you got to control the reckless spending. I think we're in a position to do that. 2, you need to reduce the burden of regulation that the Biden administration continued to place on Americans and on businesses and on employers. President Trump is ready to go. He has a great series of appointments who are ready to rip that open. And then 3, you got to unleash American energy. We need a national energy policy, not only to produce it out of the ground, but to deliver it to where it's needed in the end. If we focus on those 3 things, we can substantively bring down inflation. Americans will be far better off because the dollars they're earning will go much further and will address the pain that folks are feeling day in and day out.
Congressman, thank you. We'll be watching your work. Bryan Steil joining us this morning. We'll be right back.